So as Jovana said, I studied mathematics in university and went on to become a high school educator. And long before I actually went into university, I have been working with educating students across all grades, all ages in mathematics. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about. But of course, most of my experience does come from high school education. So when I was starting this project, thinking about how to make math curriculum for grade 1, grade 2 students, my mind still went to my high school classes. What does the high school mathematics class look like this year? Many of my grade 9s don't know how to add fractions. They don't know how to multiply without the calculator. I say, oh, you have to multiply something, take out the calculator right away. And I say, no, put the calculator away. You should know this, right? Or even when I think about my grade 12 calculus students, at the edge of their math career, they don't know how to simplify simple expressions involving exponents or square roots. There's a lot of talk about math anxiety. That's something that's been popping up a lot lately. When I told people I was going to be studying math in university, there's automatically a shock and fear on their faces, like, math, how can you study that? And that becomes, I think, from right when students enter schools in elementary school. The current standards that are being set are far too low, and the educators that are teaching them, unfortunately, most of the time are not comfortable with math themselves. That's where math anxiety is coming from. Kids are scared of math. They don't think they can do math. And so when I began this project, my immediate question was, how can we eliminate this? And the only answer that I had was to raise the rigor, right? Ontario has been noticing that there has been a problem, that students aren't meeting their current expectations. And their answer to that is, well, let's just lower them further. And that goes directly against the current literature we're seeing in the education world. It's actually saying that when you increase rigor, not only are you reducing or even eliminating anxiety in math, you're also, of course, increasing the learning that's being done, right? When you set high expectations, students are very, very eager to meet those high expectations. When you lower them, even those kids that maybe like math suddenly lose a distaste for math, right? They're not being challenged anymore. They need to be challenged in order to want to learn more. And so that's what brought me to creating the curriculum. So as you'll see here, this is the breakdown that I have for right now. It looks very similar to what the Ontario curriculum looks like, but the expectations themselves are far different. We are really, like Amelia is saying, bringing up the expectations quite a bit to challenge our students, and very much focusing on things like thinking and problem solving. So this is the breakdown. We have number sense, and the competencies mainly include different operations, so multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. You'll also see the addition of fractions. That's something that does not make its way into the Ontario curriculum for the first couple of years, which is very important that we start off by learning that right away. We have algebra, so we've introduced coding as well as patterns. Spatial sense, so students becoming very, very comfortable with all sorts of shapes, both 2D and 3D, right from the get-go, something that we don't do in Ontario. We really start with the 2D and we stick with it for a while. And then data, and of course, financial literacy, something that is very important for students to learn as well. On this next slide, you'll see just a small little snapshot of what the current math curriculum looks like for our school. This is a snapshot from the grade 1 curriculum. I've included the units algebra, spatial sense, and data here. And so how we've organized the curriculum is to, I hope, make it easy for both teacher and parents to understand. So we see over here all the way on to the left, we have the competencies and a definition and breakdown of what they are so that everyone can understand what it is that we're talking about. And then we have a level 4 expectation. One thing I want to make clear is this level 4 expectation is a challenging one, but still it is not the ceiling. We do want to encourage our students at all times to really push themselves. So if they find that this is something that they can do easily, we're absolutely going to be encouraging them to go further, because why not? So we really don't want to diminish the curiosity and the will to learn in our students. And then finally, we have an example lesson or task that is going to either introduce the learning we're talking about or reinforce it sooner. So that's something you might see in the classroom. It might be something that the teacher decides to use themselves. And I, of course, wanted to do some direct comparisons with the Ontario curriculum so you can see more about what I'm talking about. I just took a couple of competencies from our grade 1 curriculum, and on the next slide you'll see one from the grade 2. I would love to go and talk about every single one individually. It's something I'm very much passionate about, but I don't want to talk here for 3 hours, so we'll stick with the 3 that I've chose. So as you can see, in the Ontario curriculum, in grade 1, students are only representing and counting to the number 50. So no numbers exist beyond that for them, unfortunately, at that point. But what we've decided to do is to have students represent numbers up to 1,000 and count up to 200, both forwards and backwards, starting from any number between 0 and 200. You'll also see that I've included the ability for students to be able to compare quantities using more complex mathematical symbols like less than, greater than, and equal to. It's very important for students to be able to make sense of the quantities they're talking about, not just say 950, but know what 950 really means. And one way to do that is through comparison. So 950 is larger than 1, it's larger than 949, and so on and so forth. And on the next slide, we have an example from our grade 2 curriculum. So in the Ontario curriculum, we have being able to add numbers that add up to no more than 100. And personally, I believe this is unnecessarily simplistic. Once a student has the skills to be able to add 2 numbers that add up to 100, there is no reason why we can't expand it further. The same skills that you use to add up to 100, you use to add up to 1,000 and beyond. And so that's why I've extended that to 1,000. And you'll notice as well, on the bottom, I have being able to determine the unknown from the expression of the form A plus blank equals C. So that is something we'd call an equation, right? Being able to solve an equation. I teach my grade 9s that. So I get a lot of pushback on how is it that you're expecting a grade 2 to be able to do something your grade 9s struggle with. Well, that's because by introducing something like this in grade 2, we're building up the intuition, right? When I first introduce solving equations to my grade 9s, there's some students that know right away what to do without me even having to teach them the whole idea of doing the opposite operation to solve for x. And that's because from a young age, they were able to explore math further and build up that intuition. Then I have students that very much struggle with this. So my idea in introducing this in grade 2 is not to necessarily write 3 plus x equals 5 and then say solve the equation, but like Emilia was talking about, take on a more hands-on approach to this learning. So instead you ask a student, you want to buy something that costs $5, but you only have 3. How can you buy it? How much more money do you need? Once you phrase it as in a question like that, it becomes a lot more easier for the student to understand. And eventually we abstract that into being able to solve something like an expression like you see on the screen. So that is what we have so far for the curriculum. I want to really bring the point out that we are very much increasing the rigor, going usually 2 to 3 grades ahead, but I do believe that the students are able to do it because their curiosity shows that they're able to do so, and it will make them more confident with their mathematics education in the future, which is something we're really, really striving to achieve here. So that'll be it for me. Thank you for listening today.